Although fashion trends come and go, a constant thread can be found in the hazardous pursuit of beauty. The need to dress to impress stretches like spandex throughout history and even includes Adam and Eve accessorizing with itchy fig leaves. Here's a closet full of more crimes of fashion that are not only cruel and unusual, but should have been against the law. Number 8. Chopines. Italians know shoes, perhaps it's because their country resembles the shape of a boot. Gucci, Prada, and Salvatore Ferragamo all hold court in the pantheon of leather gods. However, Italy is responsible for the 15th century footwear fiasco called Chopines. As a precursor to the high heel, Chopines were platform clogs typically made from wood or cork that protected wearers from mud and filth in the streets of Venice. Functionality would eventually give way to form as the shoes grew both in popularity and height, reaching as high as 20 inches. Like many fashion trends, Chopines also reflected social status in which members of the noble classes reached new heights. The added elevation led to frequent accidents as Venetians tripped, stumbled, and fell, resulting in more than just their shoes getting dirty. Number 7. Tudor Ruffs. Unlike pet cones that prevent your dog from licking his wounds, the Tudor Ruff served no real practical purpose other than making necks of the Elizabethan age extremely uncomfortable. The ornamental garment favored by Queen Elizabeth I would become one of the most iconic fashion symbols of the period, but also potentially hazardous because of the number of pins required to maintain the rigid shape. Originally worn like a lace necklace, the ruff grew in size, rapidly expanding in concert with its popularity. Tudor ruffs also limited one's peripheral vision, forcing the wearer to awkwardly twist or turn to move his or her entire body in order to see. The suffocating collars were constructed from several layers of either stiffened or pleated frills made from materials such as lace and linen. More elaborate designs featured jewels and gold threads to cover the neck and shoulders of a man and the neck, breasts, and shoulders of a woman. Number 6. Foot binding. Practiced by women in China for over 1,000 years, foot binding involved deforming the feet of young girls to permanently fit into a tiny lotus shoe. Fetishizing small feet also held far-reaching social and economic implications in Chinese culture. The prospects of marriage often depended on it, in which the most desirable bride possessed a 3-inch foot known as a golden lotus. The process, however, involved excruciating pain that sounds more like torture than beautification of the female form. To achieve the desired shape, feet were tightly wrapped daily for 2 years. But first, all the toes, except the big toe, were broken and bound flat against the sole to create a triangle shape. Heavy pressure was then applied to bend the arch using gauze bandages. The binding would often cut off circulation, resulting in gangrene. The process also required the girls to walk long distances to hasten the crushing of the arches. Over time, the wrappings also became tighter and the shoes smaller as the heel and sole were fused. Despite the discomfort and life-threatening effects, the crippling ritual endured until finally being officially banned by the New Republic of China in 1912. Number 5. Stiff high collar. The detachable collar, made from highly starched fabric, provided the convenience of not having to change the shirt every day. But the stiffened material also threatened to cut off the blood supply to the carotid artery in the neck. As a result, the seemingly benign fashion accessory turned into a deadly weapon, killing scores of men in the Edwardian era. Nicknamed father killers, the victim would nod off and be suffocated when the head tilted forward. The simple act of eating a meal also led to incidents of choking to death before removing the collar in time. In 1888, the New York Times ran an obituary with the headline, "Choked by his collar." A man named John Cruzy had been found dead in a park, and the coroner thought the man had been drinking, seated himself on a bench, and fell asleep. His head dropped over on his chest, and then his stiff collar stopped the windpipe and checked the flow of blood through the already contracted veins, causing the death to ensue from asphyxia and apoplexy. Number 4. Powdered wigs. For many men, premature hair loss at a young age can be a traumatic experience. But if you're King Louis XIII of France, you simply start a new trend by covering your dome with a peruke, better known as a wig. His son would later elevate the fashion as an esteemed status symbol while creating several unintended health risks. An epidemic of syphilis ravaged Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, resulting in hair loss as one of its many unpleasant side effects. One of its most prominent victims, Louis XIV, the Sun King, responded by donning increasingly flamboyant coiffures during his 72-year reign, making Cher look downright dowdy by comparison. But as the popular fashion spread to the masses, so did lice and vermin inhabiting the horsehair-made hives. The zeal for more creative styles by both sexes led to lard-infused curls and an assortment of powders made from lead. Since candles provided the only form of artificial light, those with particularly extravagant do's risked setting their heads ablaze. Although the wigs were no longer en vogue by the end of the 19th century, today many judges and barristers in the British Commonwealth still wear them to honor the monarch. Number 3. Hobble skirts. The term slave to fashion certainly applies to the hobble skirt, replicating the same effect as wearing leg irons. Nonetheless, this early prototype of the pencil skirt enjoyed a brief but popular run in the early 20th century, despite severely restricting movement. The ankle-length design featured a narrow hem, forcing women to walk in small, measured steps. The sleek silhouette, however, helped drive sales, but eventually a series of accidents involving women led to their demise. Even Pope Pius X joined in the debate, launching a crusade against women's styles of the day that included condemnation of hobble skirts. In a 1911 report in the daily newspaper of the Vatican City-State, the pontiff declared, "The fashions of these women, not ladies, would have had a most unfavorable judgment from pagan Roman matrons." Number 2. Corsets. As the de facto queen of women's undergarments, corsets have maintained a long celebrated history, possibly dating back as far as the Minoan civilization. Today's wearers, however, can enjoy the bodice without suffering the same life-threatening consequences endured by the tightly laced women of the Victorian era. From shattered ribcages to internal bleeding, the coveted hourglass look came with a hefty price. The most common side effect resulted in difficulty breathing as well as fainting, a condition depicted in a memorable scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where Elizabeth Swann falls into the water after being laced up too tight. Corsets are also responsible for adding to the lexicon of the English language. The term straight-laced connotes upright morals, whereas corsetless loose women implies the opposite. It should also be noted that men are equally guilty in the dangerous quest regarding physical standards of beauty. Number 1. Crinolines. By the 1960s, crinolines, also known as panniers or hoopskirts, had reached the height of popularity for women of all social statuses. The garments also had an alarming tendency to catch fire, giving the term fashion victim an unfortunate literal meaning. The skirts were designed to exaggerate women's hips with a flattering silhouette and typically consisted of a steel-reinforced petticoat layered in fabric. Demand for extended sizes and more elaborate shapes and styles would eventually produce deadly consequences. Women sporting these cumbersome costumes tended to knock over candles or stand too close to a fireplace, accidentally setting themselves on fire. Other potential hazards included getting snagged by machinery or pulled under fast-moving carriage wheels. Although some reports claim the buoyant skirts helped save women from drowning, the excessive weight could have just as easily sent the Victorian ladies to Davy Jones's locker. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do smash that thumbs up button below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, check out my other channel, Biographics. There's a couple of people in today's video that we've done Biographics episodes on. I'm going to link to that channel below. And thank you for watching.